Hello, my name is Paige Comini, and welcome back to another episode of The Edge. Over the past year, 63% of teenage passenger deaths occurred due to another teenager driving. Here at the high school, we have a class called Driver's Theory. Today, I have the superintendent, Dr. Murphy, here with me to discuss the class and talk about why or why not it should be a requirement to graduate. So, how are you doing today, Dr. Murphy?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
So, what's your opinion on Driver's Theory? Do you think it's a good class, or?
I think it's a great class. I know Mr. Farrell works really hard to ensure students learn the necessary information in that class.
Yeah. Do you think it's beneficial towards teen drivers specifically?
Absolutely.
How so?
I think that it's a course where you can learn skills around being a safe driver, distracted driving, and just in general how to just be a good citizen on the road.
Good. So, I took the class, sophomore year, and I loved it. It was one of my favorite classes. So do you think that if it was a requirement to graduate, do you think it would benefit everyone, like even like the kids, or do you think they'd be like, oh, it's stupid, like it's one of those classes?
So I have a mixed theory on it being a grad requirement. We have a lot of requirements here in Pennsylvania that students have to meet to be able to graduate from high school, and we have to ensure that those are met first. So I think the skills that you learn in driver's theory obviously are all great life skills, but they're also skills where you could learn through your parents, through a driver's school, without taking a credit or a course away from something you can take in your high school day.
Yeah. So you mentioned the driving school or driving lessons. Why don't we have those here at the high school?
As far as beyond Mr. Farrell's course?
Yeah, you know how say you have your permit and you can take driving lessons. Do you think we should have those at the high school, or instead of paying outside of high school?
We don't have the ability to do that at Peters Township. I'm not sure if it deals with insurance or requirements, but we do the in-class on-the-road safety.
Okay. So is there a reason why we don't have them practice driving on the road or the parking lot in a
I don't believe that's part of our curriculum, and it may not be able to. I'm not sure how that works with insurance or the other requirements that you have to do that.
So you're saying we don't have what's the word? We can't do it because of
it may be multiple reasons. It may be the time and the ability for one teacher to be able to do that with a classroom of students.
Yeah.
I'm not an expert in driver's theory curriculum, but I think to be able to do it in a 41-minute period would be really challenging for Mr. Farrell.
Yeah.
So he can hit the important high-quality things around driving and safety, where the on-the-road could be handled, with your parents or with another educator in driver's education.
I know my mom went to Peters, and she had a driver's ed class, and it was a requirement to graduate, and they actually went out on the road and practiced. So kind of basing off what you just said, is it a reason because we don't have the ability to do it, or why is that not a requirement anymore?
I wasn't here when it was not made a requirement. I can make some guesses. I'm not sure of any local school district that has students out on the road. There could be, but I work here. I think it probably came when requirements from the state changed. You have many things you have to take around English, math, science, phys ed, health. There are many standards you have to take to be able to graduate, and I'm not sure if that changed if driver's theory changed from when I was a kid, but it's not necessarily a Chapter 4 state requirement, so that's probably one of the reasons it may have gone away.
Okay. So do you think education would prevent kids from getting in more accidents, driver's education?
I think knowledge is power, and I think that anytime you learn something, hopefully it helps you moving forward. I think most teen accidents are caused by just being distracted and just age and maturity, and just the more you do it, the better you get at it. But adults get into accidents too. I know not at the same rate as teenagers, but I think just knowing not to be distracted and playing on your phone and having too many students and other kids in the car with you, I think that's why a lot of laws have changed around teen driving in the last decade. So anytime you're educated on something, I do hope it helps.
Yeah. So how does learning the ways of the road benefit of, let's say, teen drivers? Like, do you think it like helps them like learning how to like switch lanes or like parallel park? Like,
oh, sure. I could use some help still on parallel parking.
I can't do it. Yeah. So I know USC and like Upper St. Clair, up Bethel Park and Canamac, they require it to graduate.
I can't speak to their requirements.
Yeah, for sure.
I know St. Clair, my niece is a senior at St. Clair, and she doesn't have to take it. So it may be an elective option, because it's an awesome elective option for students to take if they can fit it in their schedule and they have the desire to take it.
Yeah. So why does education decrease teen accidents?
I would again, I think every time you learn something, it helps you be better at it. I would hope that education would help that, but I think being less distracted would help that too.
So I know class teaches you how to like change a tire, or like it does. I still can't change it though. Or like getting gas. So how do you think the class teaches you for like problem solving, like in that situation?
I just think Mr. Farrell probably gives you all just little case studies or things to think about on the road, and just knowing the laws and the rules of driving, I think would help you be better prepared.
Yeah, I know whenever I took it, we watched like videos of like drug use and like texting, and I know that like made me think like, wow, like I feel like my mom should take this over again, honestly. I'm kidding. So how do you think it affects teens when they're driving, like that, those videos, like the...
Well, I think anything when it hits at your heartstrings or it really makes you think, might make you think to do the right thing when you're driving and not drink and drive or look at your cell phone. Or I think the good thing about that is we can expose you all to that. I mean, obviously driver's theory can do it every day for a semester, but it's information we can get you in other ways.
Yeah, for sure. So how would taking this class benefit your insurance and like your payments? You know, you can get in a car accident, like
I would think that some insurances do offer a discount for teen drivers. I'm not sure how that works, but I think that it probably would help in some way.
Yeah. So do you think driver's theory teaches you life skills?
For sure, because if driving is definitely a skill that most people do every single day.
So do you want to evaluate more on that, like explain more, like what life skills do you think?
I think driving in general, obviously, maybe taking turns when it comes to coming out of the student lot, using the zipper method that I know Mr. Farrell teaches you all and talks about. Manners in that respect when it comes about dismissal and leaving the student lot. Just safety in general and not speeding and following rules and letting pedestrians cross, things like that.
So how would you think driver's theory would impact like your life? Like say you took driver's theory in like high school and like now you're like an adult. Do you think you'd be like, oh, like I learned that in driver's theory? Like do you think it like how would it impact your life?
I didn't, so I can just guess how it would. I think maybe like you said, if I was picking up my cell phone at a red light, I might change my mind because I remember the video Mr. Farrell showed me. Or something along the lines of if I was trying to parallel park down on Carson Street or something, which is a really challenging street to parallel park on, I would think of the rules I learned or how to turn my wheel that I learned in driver's theory.
Yeah, for sure. So I know they offer classes for adults for driving. I looked into it, but so do you think I know teens drivers and adult drivers are different. So do you think they'd be almost similar if teens took the driver's theory class or no?
I think it's one class. I think you really get better at driving by doing it more and just gaining maturity, I hope. But I mean, I know some adult drivers that are not necessarily great drivers. I think it just comes from practice, doing it more, and then really just paying attention to what you're doing.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So how do you think this class would be beneficial towards police officers and like dealing with them?
I would guess that you learn about how to interact if you're pulled over for speeding, or I think just basically just the manners that you need to have with a police officer and making sure you're being respectful.
Yeah. Actually, a couple weeks ago, I had my permit anyway, but I was going a little too fast on 19, and I actually got pulled over. But the cop was fine. He was nice.
Oh, that's nice.
But driver's theory actually taught me how to just be nice and almost kiss up, because he'll let you off, the hook. But yeah, that was it. It definitely taught me to just be because if I feel if I didn't know that, I would have I would have freaked out. But yeah, it definitely helped me with the police officer type situation. All right, we'll be back to discuss more right after this commercial break. All right, so I loved our practical skills in driver's theory. So how could we better those throughout the high school?
I think practical skills beyond what you do in your academic classes are best covered in most of our electives. In media, in arts, you learn a lot of hands-on learning and do a lot of hands-on activities that really help you think through things that can be applicable to everyday life.
Yeah. So do you think those benefit, what's the word? The way you drive and the way you think about I learned that in, what's it called, speech class or whatever,
I do think that once you learn something, sometimes it takes a couple times to hear it, but once you learn it, you definitely think about it and apply it to what you do in whatever situation you're in.
Yeah. So, going back to driver's theory. So, Mr. Farrell teaches 4 classes a semester, right? Mm-hmm. So, why don't we offer it a full semester, I meant?
I'm not sure if there's enough content to cover an entire year. Mr. Farrell would know that better than I. We offer, most students that sign up for it are able to take it. Mm-hmm. More than 200 students this year will access driver's theory, which is pretty good for a class size. We're hovering between 300 and 350 students per class. So kids are opting in to take it because it is a great class to take.
For sure. Yes, it's nothing like math, science, those basic core subjects. Yeah, it's a nice break in the day. So if it was a requirement to drive, so there's some kids that have a disability and can't physically get a driver's license, would they be able to opt out of the class and take a different one, or? So
in theory, yes, because some students can graduate according to their IEP. That's why it's important. One of the reasons why I think I wouldn't necessarily advocate that it be a required class is because it would take a period out of a student's day where they might want to take something else and have a passion for media, and maybe they wouldn't be able to fit media in because driver's theory was a semester that they had to take. I think the great thing is it's an option for students, but it's also an option that you could get somewhere else if you weren't able to fit it into your day at Peters Township High School.
Yeah. So, health is a requirement. We've been doing that since, 5th grade?
Yes. It's unfortunately a Chapter 4 requirement. We have a lot of things that we have to do. You do things every day I bet you don't even know are required by the law. Recently, our state passed a law that students had to do CPR and AED training. Luckily, we already did that in personal wellness, but I know other local districts might be struggling to push that into their curriculum. Other things have to be covered now around opioid awareness. Yeah. A legislator can decide something one day, and that becomes something we as a district or an education community have to decide, how do we make sure that we get that so that you all get a valid diploma from Pennsylvania. That's, again, one of the reasons why you have to take math and science and English like you do in gym and phys ed. They all are connected back to required standards that we have to cover before you graduate.
Yeah. We learn about opioids in driver's theory. So why do we learn it twice, do you think?
I think it's, again, one of those things that the more you know, the more you may be dissuaded from using it in the future. It is a requirement in personal wellness. I think Mr. Farrell pushes it into driver's theory just to add another layer of knowledge for you all.
Yeah. So how are teens more prone to accidents than adults, do you think?
I think it just comes with maturity and practice.
Yeah.
You're newer to driving. One would argue that it's just not something you're used to doing. So I think in that respect, that might be why.
Yeah. How do you think driver's theory, taking that class, would benefit that?
I just think it would, again, help you think through, I learned this from Mr. Farrell, I need to pay attention when I'm making a left or doing a 3-point turn or something like that.
Yeah, for sure. How do you think teens who don't take this class compare to teens driving who do take this class? Like, how do you think their driving is compared?
I don't know. I can't speak to that. I didn't take a driver's theory class, and I shouldn't say it out loud, but I've had a pretty good driving record. I hope I didn't just jinx myself. But I think one of the reasons why I wouldn't necessarily want it to be a graduation requirement is because it is something that you could do over the summer.
Yeah.
You could work with a really experienced driver. I don't discount what a great class it is, and that's why we have so many kids taking it, and it's a great practical skill to learn. I just would worry it would impact your ability to take something else where you might have a passion if you didn't want to take driver's theory.
Yeah, good. So you didn't take a driver's ed class?
No, my dad taught me how to drive. That's what we did back in the day.
I refuse to take like driving lessons. I don't want that help at all. I'm just like, no. But do you think so? You have to pay for driving lessons, I would assume. Why don't we offer that? I guess like it'd be like free here, I guess.
We do. That's why if you have the access to be able to do it in the summer, you can choose to do that, or you can take it with Mr. Farrell.
Yeah. So the class teaches you about hand-eye coordination and like your depth perception, like the car and like things.
Okay.
So how do you think that's beneficial towards your hand-eye coordination, the class?
Based on what you're saying, it sounds like it would be really helpful when you're learning how to parallel park or some of the things that are challenging even for adult drivers, because knowing the depth of your car is sometimes challenging.
Yeah. Yeah, even for me, I just like, I can't do it. So how would it affect adults, do you think, if they had to take this class, if they were in high school?
I think there are adults that are required because of poor driving records that have to take driving courses. So the benefit of the course, it obviously has a benefit because I think it's, again, a practical skill you can learn, and it's something that people need to access every day. It just becomes around applying that knowledge, I think, is where sometimes people struggle and have accidents or, you know, situations where, again, an adult's required because they really didn't think about what Mr. Farrell taught them as a teenager at Peters Township High School, or similar to that.
Yeah. So, like math, science, English, and history, do you think that, or like how is that education, how does that benefit your like common sense when driving, do you think? Like, how does it do it?
I'm not sure if any of those would, unless maybe in English you read a short story, or in social studies you were studying some of the statistics you were talking about. I think based on what I think you're asking there, it's around, those are all required standards we have to cover.
Yeah.
You have to take American government because of civic standards. Coming in the future, before students graduate, they're going to have to take a civics test. That goes back to some of the laws and rules that come down from legislators that we as a district have to make sure you guys meet. Yeah. And there are just so many things that we have to ensure in your curriculum that we cover, that's typically why it's there. It may seem silly, like why are we even doing this, but it's often because there's a requirement behind it.
Yeah. So you have to go off the state's requirements of graduation requirements and stuff like that.
Yes.
Can you make up like your own requirements, like the school, or like?
So In theory, there are things you can do. That's why we can say we really want to make sure everybody takes a world language or an arts course. That's why our graduation requirement there is arts or humanities. Then that way, if you're really passionate about art, you can cover it that way, or you can take a world language. Where we have flexibility is really in our electives. And that's where I think students really find a passion and find something that they want to perhaps do after high school and really are engaged in. And that's where we have a little more flexibility. You have flexibility in the courses you offer around English, math, science, but you still are required to cover algebra standards or communication standards and things like that. That's where the legislator passes that down.
Yeah, good. So with the electives and like you're finding your passion of like what you want to do the rest of your life, how would taking driver's theory do that?
Well, I think driver's theory just is a good skill to learn. I think, and having the option to do that is outstanding, because in my previous district it wasn't a course option, but I think being a course option here and having so many students want to take it is commendable, because it is definitely something you need for life.
Yeah. So if it's something you need for life, just like health, why wouldn't we offer it for a requirement if we need it for life?
Because we don't have to, and there are so many other things that we have to do. And just back to the statistics of the number of students taking the class, without it being a graduation requirement, so many kids are opting to do it. The kids that aren't either can't or are perhaps doing it in other ways so that they can take a second science, so that they can take 2 media courses. I just wouldn't want it to handcuff a student's schedule to be able to take everything they want to take. It's an option there, and if it fits into your day and your choice, it's awesome, and it's obviously happening. But I wouldn't want it to be a situation where a student couldn't take a band class or something because they had to take another course. And that's kind of my theory around graduation requirements all the way around. So not just driver's theory, but I prefer a little more broad, so students can really opt into what they want to take and what they want to do to be able to prepare themselves for after high school.
Yeah. So you said we don't have to require it to graduate, but we don't have to offer like a world language but we require it to graduate.
We do have to offer world language, and you do have to take it for most colleges. That's one of the reasons why it's part of an and or around our graduation requirements. It allows students that want to go into colleges the requirement to meet that requirement. If they don't, they can use the arts as their credit, perhaps.
Yeah, and what was I gonna say? I forgot. Shoot, what was I gonna say? I totally forgot.
Take a pause. Come up with the last question.
Yeah. All right. So, for the big finale, do you think if this class was a requirement, would there be less teen accidents, or would it be reduced?
I mean, cause and effect, possibly. I think, but again, I think it's why it's great. It's a skill you can learn without it being forced into it.
Awesome. All right. This concludes today's episode of The Edge. I would like to thank Deputy Superintendent Dr. Murphy for joining me to discuss teen drivers and ways to reduce teen causing accidents and their education. We will see you next time.